and it's or.
Yeah.
And that makes all the difference.
It's really valuable. There's so many areas, and I always think this to research, for instance, because you see these veins of research and you often see research teams and they're just going down this path. And if you're someone who's skeptical, which, Jack and I tend to probably sound a little bit more skeptical.
Really? You picked that up?
Yeah. But one of the things that we often do is we won't agree with maybe even their central hypothesis of what they're working, and they're digging this hole, I don't know to where, and it's like they think that they're going to come up, as you said, they're going into the history of the law and they're getting all excited about it, and they're getting so excited they think they're going to come to this golden finding, and eventually often it peters out or it goes nowhere, and it's almost like no one in that research group stopped and said, wait a minute, your basic premise that you're working from isn't that solid to start with. Go back and actually think about or question what you're doing.
Well, the other thing with that too, John, is I think of some examples of researchers who think they're onto something big and they're stuck in their own little web.
It's a bubble, And
then if they actually look a bit more beyond their own research or talk to other researchers that related to their field, they realize that that's actually been explored already.
Yeah.
Or they already have come to significant conclusions about whether they think it's going to work.
We've seen that a lot, and I know probably people will find this controversial, but I think that happened a lot in the tendon research. I think it happened
and muscle architecture.
Muscle architecture research.
Like the whole biomechanics versus tissue capacity.
And I think a heap of even really good research was done, in the muscle physiology understanding of the neural drivers and things like that.
Yes.
That was done in the 70s and 80s.
Yeah, by
and people are coming back and having those discussions. It's like, you haven't actually learned to look outside your own little, as you said, bubble to realize you're going down the wrong path.
That was actually a question I was going to ask you too, but I think you answered pretty well, Helen. What's the difference with your ability to identify the most relevant information in a case versus, say, your junior or someone with less experience? But I think you probably highlighted before of actually just going back to the fundamentals of what determines the decision-making process for the judge or the court. Would that be fair?
Well, sometimes it is, but I think one of the things that happens with experience is and Colin said at the outset, you do get a lot better at understanding the framework. So I work with a particular junior who is he's really great on the detail, but he disappears into the detail. And I'm always looking back to what's the framework? Let's see what the framework is, and then we'll go into the detail and see if the detail fits that framework. That's what I'm always looking for, because I've got a good feel. I've usually got a good feel for, look, this is what the law is. This is what the facts are going to do in this. So I think this is what the case is. And then the junior's job is to say, yes, the evidence supports that, or to say, no, we can't. It's not going to work to put it that way.
Well, that was going to be my next question is, do you find you have many experiences where a colleague who has less experience, you actually learn something from them, or they actually challenge your perceptions? Because, I think one of the issues you always have with experience is that can also help reinforce your own bias, which can be problematic. And, the idea of experience can be
I always assume my juniors are way smarter than me, so they usually are.
That's a good way to look at it. Yeah. Well, the reason Jack brings that up, but I don't know if either of you are at all familiar with a researcher named Philip Tetlock, and he wrote a book called Super Forecasting. And it was about the ability for experts to make predictions or forecasts. And basically, I think one of the quotes from an article that he got interviewed by The Atlantic after he'd written a number of papers was that experts are no better than chimpanzees throwing darts at a dartboard when they are, making predictions or forecasts. And the reason is, as I said, is over time you develop really strong biases. And I think it's interesting, as you said, in your profession, I think you get called upon very often to question those biases because, as you said before, Colin, there's external factors that actually influence the outcome, not just you and the client, which I think is actually interesting for people in healthcare because we don't often get that unless something happens sometimes in, say, compensation claims, where it has to go to an independent medical assessment or something like that, where someone goes, wait a minute, you've been dicking around now for 12 months, get on track. For you guys, I don't think that happens as often because you go to court and someone actually makes a decision. And to me, I think that is a really valuable lesson to learn, to have people consistently questioning, one, what they do, but also having other people question what they do.
I think one of the things